Hello and welcome back to Monster Monday. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about some monsters from this book. It's time to get mythic with our monsters. Well, after doing a bunch of dragons, I felt like it would be an injustice if I didn't talk about a variation on that theme. And that, of course, is the Hydra. Now, Hydras have been around in D&D for as long as the games existed. Again, influenced by Greek mythology, they've been around. But in Mythic Odysseys of Theros, it's a little bit more fleshed out, and there's a little bit lore added to it. And when we look at these creatures, the options are pretty wide-ranged. And it's going to be interesting to see how people use these in their campaigns. And I have some thoughts to share with you about how you could use these and even scale them so that you can use powerful creatures like a Hydra even at lower level. But let's dig in a little bit into this book and talk about what they do, what they are, what are their motivations, and then we can think about ideas for using them. What Krakens are to the sea and dragons are to the sky, Hydras are to the lands of Theros. Various Hydras dwell at the fringes of civilization, from the bog-dwelling Hydras, known across the multiverse, to massive Ironscale Hydras that lurk in deep wildernesses. Beyond even these exist serpentine horrors born of the whims of foul gods, like the legendary Hydra Polukranos. During their early years, Hydras feed their rapid growth by terrorizing the land. When they grow large enough, they look for a territory to claim as their own. Often they steal lairs from other monsters in prolonged, devastating battles. Soon after a Hydra claims a territory, it typically buries itself, entering a period of hibernation during which it continues to grow. When it awakens, it goes on a feeding rampage, so beginning the cycle once again. These rhythms of destruction sometimes become so ingrained in the minds and lore of a people that even after a Hydra's defeat, the beast might reappear as a Nyxborn being and begin its legend anew. Five-headed Ironscale Hydras lurk in the wild places of the world, being common foes for heroes seeking to test their mettle against terrors worthy of the gods' notice. Most Ironscale Hydras inhabit lakes and boggy caverns, from which they hunt unwary creatures that come for a drink or swim. Polukranos, called the World Eater, is the mortal manifestation of the eternal ideal of a Hydra. In its first incarnation, it fell from Nyx to the mortal world, and so great were its size and strength that the gods Nylea and Heliod combined their power to bind the monster deep within the Nessian wood. That incarnation was slain, but the eternal ideal remains. A new incarnation of the World Eater is a fearsome omen, as the monster only appears when the pillars of the world tremble and terrible things are afoot in the realm of the gods. Its rampages often presage an age of menace for all civilization. So, we're talking about two variations on Hydras, right? The Ironscale Hydra, and then this, what I'll call unique, to use a Advanced Dungeons & Dragons first edition term. Some monsters were listed as unique, so for example, Tiamat was unique, one of a kind. This Polukranos, I just can't get it right, Polukranos. This is also a unique creature, and it's super powerful. Not like Tiamat powerful, but challenge rating 19 is pretty powerful. So what I want to do is first take a look at these two variations on the Hydra, and then discuss my ideas about how we can use them. And I have ideas that apparently might be better than this book. I know that's a bold statement, right? But it's true. Ironscale Hydra. So this guy is no laughing matter. Just the base stat block that they have in here is challenge rating 12. Gargantuan monstrosity. So this is clearly something designed for really powerful and large and experienced veteran upper mid-level to high-level adventures, right? Those kind of encounters and adventures and campaigns. You're not talking about sending in a group of 5th level people to take on this guy because they'd get wiped. But, maybe a really experienced and tactically oriented, experienced group of players, maybe in the 8 to 10 range, could have a fighting chance. But definitely like 10 to 15, 15 and above, those level tiers are certainly a decent match for this. Armor class of 17, 11d20 plus 66 hit points. It has a swim speed and a land speed of 40. They have damage immunity to acid, which will make sense in just a moment. And one of their primal abilities is acidic blood. So when the Hydra takes piercing or slashing damage, each creature within 5 feet of the Hydra takes 2d8 acid damage. I want you to note that there's no saving throw. That's kind of what makes that dangerous. And because it's gargantuan, I want you to imagine this mini on your battle map or your terrain and a group of people around it. It doesn't matter if Joe the fighter slashes with his sword on this side, everybody's taking damage. It doesn't say within 5 feet of where the wound takes place. It says within 5 feet of the Hydra. I'm going to be honest with you, from a meta perspective, that bothers me. It doesn't make any sense. If I was on the flank of the person and, somebody cut on the right side and I'm on the left side, why should I take blood damage? It's not like the blood bursts out in a sphere. So, as a DM, you might want to think about modifying that to make it wherever, within 5 feet of where the wound took place, anybody in that area could get that splashback of the blood. But rules as written in this book, it's literally saying that anyone within 5 feet of the Hydra takes that acid damage. Now, it's 2d8, so it's not a lot, but there's no saving throw. There's nope, just take it, just 2d8. So that's kind of a crazy thing there. The other ability they have is to hold breath. The Hydra can hold its breath for 1 hour, which you don't think that's necessarily huge, right? But imagine that you're running an adventure that happens on a ship and you have angered this Hydra. It can now just follow your ship until you get to some point where you're more vulnerable and then attack and then dive back down. Come back up, attack, dive back down. Good luck fighting that foe. Multiple heads. So this is really what makes a Hydra and not just a basic dragon. The Hydra has 5 heads. While it has more than 1 head, the Hydra has advantage on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, or knocked unconscious. Whenever the Hydra takes 35 or more damage in a single turn, one of its heads dies. If all of its heads die, the Hydra dies. At the end of its turn, it grows 2 heads for each of its heads that died since its last turn, unless it has taken fire damage since its last turn. The Hydra regains 10 hit points for each head regrown in this way. So it's like a troll dragon. You have to do fire damage to keep it down. Good to know. And plenty of fun for a DM to manage that. Reactive heads. For each head the Hydra has beyond 1, it gets an extra reaction that can be used only for opportunity attacks. Opportunity attacks indeed. Wakeful. While the Hydra sleeps, at least one of its heads is awake. So good luck sneaking up on it. It has a passive perception of 18, just to be clear. So when your rogue is like, I'm going to sneak up on it, remember that even while it's sleeping, it's still keeping an eye out. All right, its actions has multi-attack. The Hydra makes as many bite attacks as it has heads. So starting off, you got 5 of those. The bite attacks are no joke. They're plus 10 to hit. They have a reach of 15 feet, and it's 2d10 plus 6 damage. So Ironscale Hydra is a good challenge for an upper mid-level campaign or adventure or encounter, and certainly for high level. Okay, and it's a good challenge because it's going to end up being a prolonged combat. It's going to end up using player resources to defeat this. It's going to end up requiring the players to think strategically and work together as a team. And that's what you want out of a good combat encounter. And sometimes on Monster Monday, I come up with cool scenarios where maybe the monster doesn't have to be a bad guy that you fight, and maybe you can, interact socially with it and persuade it to, join your cause. That's not going to happen with this guy. This is they're going to fight it because it's doing bad things to innocent people and destroying their towns and eating their livestock and whatever else you want to add into the tragedy of this encounter. But here's what I will say. In the descriptive text in the book, and if you're following along in your own book that you purchased, this is on page 230, in the description it talks about how when they're young, they go around on this killing spree and feeding, and then they hibernate and they grow, and then they come out of hibernation hungry. But unlike dragons, they don't have different stat blocks for the different ages of the Hydra. And I think that's a major component that's missing. So here's my Bill Allen advice for you. Think of the Hydra in the same way that you would the dragons, of 4 age categories, okay? And it doesn't even have to be age. You could call it size categories, whatever. But imagine that the Ironscale Hydra listed here is your adult Ironscale Hydra, right? And I think that's a fair assumption based on the stats that they've given this thing. Couldn't you then say that a young adult Ironscale Hydra could just be scaled down, give them fewer hit points, make their damage attacks less deadly, maybe lower their AC by a couple points? And right off the bat now, you've made something that is more accessible to use in a mid-level campaign. And then, because you're probably thinking, how is the great and powerful Bill going to make a Hydra that you can use in an encounter with low level? Simple. You make the Hydra Wormling. And the Hydra Wormling is just a little baby Hydra, and it's hungry, and it's growing, and it's angry, and it wants to kill everyone, but it's smaller. And that's how your low-level heroes can fight off this threat. So, maybe, and I'm just hypothesizing here, maybe if this Ironscale Hydra listed in the book is considered the adult, the young adult would have, instead of an AC of 17, it could have an AC of 14. The Wormling could have an AC of 12. For hit points, instead of 11d20 plus 66, maybe it has 8d20 plus 40, So you just lower those levels, right? You lower those levels for the young adult and for the Wormling especially. Maybe for the Wormling, you take away acidic blood. Because it's young, it hasn't had the opportunity to develop the physiology within itself that produces that acidic blood. So you take that element away. Maybe you take at the Wormling level, its regenerative powers away so that if it loses a head, maybe it doesn't regrow, 2 heads in that head's place. Maybe it regrows 1 head. So it never gets, its full capabilities back. Or maybe you roll a die at the end of the turn and, 1, 2, 3 means it regrows a head. 4, 5, 6, it doesn't. Or you make it a 1 in 6 chance if you want to scale it. But in theory, if you modify the hit points, the AC, some of the abilities and defenses and offensive abilities, then you could make a Wormling Ironscale Hydra that you can use in an encounter with a low-level party. So that's my thought on the Ironscale Hydra, and frankly, I'm kind of shocked that Wizards didn't include age or size categories with scaling for you guys already. So maybe what I'll do is just kit bash that and share that with you guys. Let's take a look at this unique version of the Ironscale Hydra, the Polukranos. Polukranos. I wonder what that means in Greek. I'll have to look that up on Google Translate. So this dude is a badass, frankly. Although same armor class as the regular Ironscale Hydra, 17. But a bit more hit points. Not a crazy amount, actually. 15d20 plus 75. Higher swim and land speed of 50. Passive perception of 24, which is crazy. You're not sneaking up on this thing. The acidic blood on this does 3d6 damage instead of 2d6. It can hold its breath. It has legendary resistance, like a more powerful dragon would, and multiple heads. It has 5 heads. It has advantage on all those same things whenever it takes 40 or more damage in a single turn. So that's an upgrade from the 35 that the Ironscale Hydra gets. One of its heads dies. At the end of its turn, it grows 2 heads for each of its heads, unless it's taken 40 or more fire damage since its last turn. Now that's a big step up, because with the regular Ironscale Hydra, it says if it's taken any fire damage. So you could have like a wizard be like, pew, firebolt, pew, and as long as it took some 1 hit point of fire damage, it's not going to regrow. But with this guy, it has to be a significant amount, 40 or more fire damage since its last turn. It regains 20 hit points for each head regrown this way, as opposed to the 10 for the regular Ironscale Hydra. So definitely a more challenging foe to put down. Reactive heads, same thing. Siege monster. Polukranos deals double damage to objects and structures. Yikes. I didn't even think of that, but that's kind of cool in terms of a major encounter at higher levels. Maybe the group is defending a city or a castle or a palace from this, impending doom. Wakeful, it has that. Multi-attack, gets as many bites as it has heads. These bites do plus 13 to hit, reach of 15, and 2d10 plus 7. So actually not that significantly more deadly than the regular Ironscale Hydra. I'm a little bit surprised by that, frankly. I think given the difference here, going from a challenge rating 12 to a challenge rating 19, that could actually be scaled up for a party that is level 15 through 20, in my opinion. It also has a stomp, though. Okay, so the stomp is bludgeoning damage, plus 13 to hit, reach 15, 2d8 plus 7, and it has a tail. Tail attack, same stats basically, plus 13 to hit, reach 15, 2d10 plus 7 damage. It can be pushed, I guess, with the tail attack. If the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 21 strength save or be pushed up to 20 feet away from the tail attack. It has legendary actions of Detect, Tail Swipe, and Trampling Charge. Okay, so Detect is much like the dragon's legendary actions. Tail Swipe, that's described above, and Trampling Charge. So this costs 3 of its legendary actions. Polukranos moves up to 50 feet in a straight line and can move through the space of any creature, huge or smaller. The first time it enters each space, it can make a stomp attack against that creature. Wow. Okay, so that just upped its movement game quite a bit. Yeah. So not legendarily as dangerous as I thought it would be, but still a formidable foe. Would I scale the Polukranos for mid-level and low-level encounters? No. This guy is definitely for your upper, high-level encounters. And how we use him, I'm going to start backwards, actually. I'm going to start with the Polukranos first. Okay? How do I use that? I create a scenario that draws on the myth and legendary that they've established here. And I think of Greek mythology. And oftentimes, Greek mythology plot lines involve someone being naughty, angering the gods, being cursed, and then Judgment Day happens, right? Like Clash of the Titans. Think of it, same thing. Most of the myths work in some fashion like that, right? Or someone has demonstrated great hubris and defied the gods, or they have been blasphemous and they defied the gods. And, so this is epic punishment, right? So you could craft this in any, it doesn't have to be in Theros, by the way. That's my biggest rule about this book. I don't know anything about the world of Theros, and I'm not going to bother learning. I'm just going to take what I like and put it into my own games, and you should too. Why not? So let's say that you're running a game in Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms or whatever. Create a kingdom. It could be a small duchy or a small barony even. It doesn't have to be a massive kingdom. It could be a city-state, whatever. And in that, create a prideful ruler, right? An egotistical, narcissistic ruler who, requires the adoration of their minions, of their citizenry, and, thinks of themselves as above the law or above the restrictions of the gods, right? And maybe this person has huge parties and has commissioned statues of themselves all over the city, right? Maybe this person has, had orgies or, started up their own cult honoring themselves, right? But in some way, think of some pridefulness, boastfulness, gluttony, basically pick your sin or sins, implant it on this ruler. And the ruler, by the way, doesn't even have to be evil necessarily. They could just be very, very selfish and self-centered. But ultimately, that's also another plot option, because that ruler you create, maybe that person, gets to a point where they've angered or awoken the Polukranos. The gods have awoken the Polukranos, however it works in your world. Maybe there's a faction who thinks that this ruler is horrible. Maybe you make your leader horrible and evil. And there's a faction of good people with good intentions who are like, we must stop this horrible leader because he's bad and he's subjugated the people and he's defying the gods. Maybe it's a religious order, a moral, upstanding religious order who is like, we've tried all peaceable means and petitions, but he just ignores us. And so they do this ritual, they awaken the Polukranos. The Polukranos is going to come destroy the city. And now your high-level party has to stop the Polukranos from doing that. Not because they back this jerk of a leader, but because they want to spare the city and the civilians, or the whole barony. Maybe it's multiple cities. Maybe this thing's just a wrecking train. It's a siege machine. Could you involve a mid-level party with the Polukranos? Yes. Here's how. Maybe that religious order of upstanding moral folks, maybe they, with their good intentions, don't really know that they're awakening this Polukranos, right? They just know that they have this ritual, this ancient ritual of justice or righteousness, and it will summon, a creature of the gods to restore order and balance, or to restore the faith, right? The faith. So maybe your mid-level party, unknowingly, because this cult or this order doesn't even realize what they're going to be summoning, maybe they have to acquire components for this summoning ritual, right? And they don't know what they're summoning. They just know that they're being compensated and they're gaining prestige by doing this for this goodly order. Maybe this order also has acts that are good things. They maintain an orphanage. They have a monastery. They provide schooling to children, whatever, right? So the party at mid-level could be involved in this, not knowing that what they're doing is help bring this abomination out to destroy everything. They think they're doing a good thing because the people that they're helping are doing a good thing. So you could have these side missions to acquire the blood gems of blah, 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 and the ritual ceremonial dagger of the fanged serpent. And, you make up 5 or 6 different components that are rare. Maybe there's some weird root that grows only along this high mountaintop, right? This could be 5 or 6 adventures worth of things at mid-level that they're doing. And then they finally acquire all these necessary components and objects and artifacts that are needed to do the ritual. And then they do the ritual. And at first nothing happens. And they're like, oh, it's a dud. But then they start hearing about off in the mountains, there's this rumbling of this mighty thunderous sound. And this great creature has emerged from the mountains and destroyed a small village. And it's on its way towards the capital. But before it gets to the capital, there's 2 other towns on the way. So now you've engineered this as a greater plot line within the campaign. Okay, so those are some options for how you could even integrate mid-level, and ultimately at higher level, the party would be part of the forces to stop the Polukranos from destroying the city or the kingdom itself, right? Do they have to kill the Polukranos? That's a great question. Maybe they don't. And I'm actually going to draw from an idea used by my fellow legendary DM, Dan Miranda. And that is, what if they could put this to sleep? Instead of killing it, what if there's some counter ritual that is an ancient powerful spell that will drive the Polukranos back into its hibernation? Oh, ho, ho, ho. That's how you could actually use this with mid-level and not even need to have a combat encounter. But, you know, do what you got to do. My thoughts, though, are that you could use this in those ways, okay? Now let's go back to the Ironscale Hydra. Remember how I said that we could scale this. So at low level, parties, you know, 1st through 4th level, right? You could have a wormling Ironscale Hydra emerge out of the bog or out of the marsh or out of the mountains or some, you know, more remote location and begin wreaking havoc, and it's killing livestock and it's, you know, pestering peasants, and they have to hide away, but this thing, you know, constantly comes and attacks. And the party drives it off. They defeat it, they kill it. Easy encounter to throw in to an adventure, to any adventure anywhere, right? Would this be in a dungeon? Probably not. But like caves, mountains, deserts, doesn't really matter. Marshes, you know, wildlands, woodlands. Now you scale that up to the next thing, right? So you're at, you know, the second tier, like 4th through 8th level. Then you have the young adult Ironscale Hydra. And the young adult Ironscale Hydra is, you know, a little bit more powerful, and it's plaguing the lands. And maybe you have multiple in different locations, and this party's like, oh wait, we've encountered these things before. You got to be careful. But they don't know, because when they fought the wormling didn't have the acid blood thing. And they don't know now that this is a new thing that they're going to have to face. So it's not just a higher AC with more hit points and more damage with its attacks. It has these other features that you didn't reveal before. And maybe they don't realize that the young adult can regrow its heads faster, like more by the book. And then, you know, again, at mid-level, high level, maybe these things are an ongoing problem in your campaign. And you might be like, well, no, Bill, my party will get sick of it. Not if you integrate it into the storyline. And maybe the integration of the storyline is, again, going back to some overall plot that you just set up and put out there into your world, like little bait to see if they want to go for that. And if they do, if they're interested in it, that's where you bring in this NPC from a neighboring kingdom who is prideful and boastful and, you know, has hubris and narcissistic and is, you know, changing the religions. Like maybe he's abolishing the known established religions and forcing everyone to embrace him as some kind of god king. Oh, there you go. That kind of draws in the ancient Egyptian element too, right? Defying the gods. So now you've kind of thrown that out there into your world. And again, you can kit bash this for anything. Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Blackmoor. I don't really know Blackmoor, but you know, you probably could figure out a way to integrate this, right? So these things become recurring, but not annoying, right? Recurring in a sense where like they happen, but you also have other adventures that are occurring, right? But they're there. They're part of the tapestry of the campaign that you're creating. And therefore, as recurring foes, you can use them from those different, you know, age or size categories, from wormling to young adult to ancient, which I think the Polukranos is basically the ancient dragon version. Okay, so interesting stuff. And again, Hydras have been around forever. It's not like I'm untapping some, you know, secret new thing that's never been seen in D&D before. But like all things with Monster Monday, I try to think of how we can actually use them. How do we actually use them? What are different ways that we can use these or modify them to make them fit almost anywhere? And I feel like I've shared that with you guys, and hopefully you found that to be valuable. But as always, please leave in the comments below any experiences you've had running games or playing in games with Hydras, and specifically, if you've been part of a game as a DM or player where you've used these Ironscale Hydras and the concept of the Hydras in this book, in Theros, then share those comments as well. I love to find out how people use these things. So until next we meet, have a happy adventure.
Hello, it's me, Wizzy. I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. And then don't forget to tune in to the next episode of whatever show you are just watching, and crafting videos and DM tips and pro tips for vlogging and all sorts of gaming things. And also you could watch Bill eat food and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.